recording. Hi, good morning, everyone. This is the beginning of the recording. Um, Please behave. My mother's watching, or by the time this gets posted, she will be watching. So, um, she also she thinks she assumes now that everything is on YouTube. She's like, wait a minute. One of the things anybody who follows my social media know that like by Sunday noon, you'll see new fresh videos of my son playing hockey. Okay, that's like his biggest mishigas. Is not mishigas, it's his passion. Like he just waits all week for that to skate and get dressed up and everything. So you could really see his improvement if you track his progress over the years. So I was telling my mother, she's like, well, did you post it yet? I'm like, is it posted? I'm like, it's not gonna be, his hockey's not gonna be on the shul YouTube channel. I said, but I'm happy to show it to you when I see you. So okay. It's amazing. I just find it's amazing that my mother can follow it. Anyway, here's what I want to do. We have this week is Parashat Zachar. It's already Misha Nichnas Adar Marben B'Simcha, so we could discuss Purim. Because who would, unless you'd rather discuss the Mishkan? I didn't think so. So we'll discuss Purim this week and next week, and I'm really excited about that. So first of all, I'll make a book recommendation. I've been like heavy into Rabbi Foreman this year, as you know, with the Parsha. This book called The Queen You Thought You Knew. If you have it, read it. If you read it, read it again. If you don't have it, get it and read it. Don't buy it on Amazon. It's like ridiculously expensive. I think if you get it straight from, maybe if you look on the OU Press, it's like $20 versus like $45 on Amazon or something. He also has a Pesach book if you want to start working on Pesach. Vivian, should we send this to
Yes.
He has it?
No, I don't. I'll get that one.
So he has a very specific approach. You have to read also his introduction in his description of his approach. It just like in his books, in his writing, he just talks to you. Like, so I think I'm going to share a piece next week from it about, by the way, like, why would you call, if you were getting together with a bunch of friends and you had to name the holiday, what would you call it? Like, you wouldn't call it Purim, right? So like, it's very sort of interpersonal, but he asks very simple, basic text questions, which when you look at it, you're like, huh, yeah, you kind of like, what did I think of that? You know, like it's so eye-opening. And what it requires a lot of doing, and he says as much, is you have to kind of erase from your mind what you already know, which we've said that on a number of occasions. Oh, hi, Rachel, in person. This is so exciting. Like on camera. Hi. So that's. I think I'll save that for this week. I want to just do more of a broad overview of the story because you know what? We haven't read the Megillah in a year, and Purim is the last time we did anything together. Which is just crazy, by the way. We're 2 weeks out, and less than 2 weeks out. And if you think about it, Purim, Megillah, and then Suda, whatever, is the last time before we shut everything down that we had.
We already didn't go Purim.
Yeah, I didn't either, Shelley. I was done.
You were done already.
You
Yep.
knew.
Mhm.
You knew. So that's where it's like we're like everything's coming full circle, right? You know, so I'm telling you that I had my second vaccination, and I hope that people are able to get it. And the first one was like a walk in the park. The second one knocked me on my tuchus like you wouldn't believe. Oh my gosh.
But Rabbi, that's good. That means your immune system's in good shape.
Yes. So my wife had it, and then she was like down for the count for 2 days. I had it. I was fine. We had a board meeting that night, and then in the middle of the night, I woke up and I was shivering and fever, this and that. And I got up for I didn't miss shul, thank God, because you know the Jewish guilt of saying Kaddish is very, very strong. It overpowers even the flu-like symptoms. And but the next day, like I could not move. My entire body was just in pain. It was really, really challenging. But then, like as soon as it came, like after a day, boom, gone. So Baruch Hashem, I feel like anyway. I'm gonna share the screen and we're gonna go right to the text. We're gonna scroll through a little bit of the text and we're gonna ask some sort of basic questions. I'll share with you an insight that I heard from Rav Yoel Ben Nun who's again one of the preeminent Tanach scholars that we have in the world today. And it's kind of like basic questions type of thing. Okay. Now what I have to do is I have to put everybody where I could see you. There's like I've mastered the art of seeing everybody, because if I can't see you, then there we go. Perfect. Okay. So first of all, we're going to talk sort of about anomalies in the Megillah and the story of the Megillah. Okay. And I'm hoping that maybe something we learned today will appear in one of the trivia questions from our youth directors. That's really the goal of the exercise. Every day they're sending out these trivia questions. That it's a brilliant idea that instead of buying raffle tickets, you earn raffle tickets by answering the questions that they send out. Really, really clever. So I feel like I'm at Chicago. I keep answering over and over and over again, like, vote early and often. So the anomalies of the story, and really what it comes in the context of, if you had, like, if I'll take something out of like Rabbi Foreman's playbook, if you had to include books in Tanach and you had a vote, would you put Esther in the books of Tanach? Anybody have any thoughts on that? I mean, like, again, it's a hard question. You have to say, well, what's the criteria? What do you have to do to get in? But if you had, and by the way, there's no Hanukkah book in Tanakh, but there is an Esther book in Tanakh. There's a Purim book in Tanakh. Would you put Esther in Tanakh? Anybody have any strong feelings, yay or nay?
I would say yes.
Why would you say yes, Julia?
Just because if it wasn't for her, there wouldn't be Jewish people left.
Certainly not in the diaspora. Okay. There were a number of Jews living in Israel at the time. They had started the rebuilding of the Beis HaMikdash. It got stopped because of Achashverosh. Now, again, the center of Judaism was in Shushan, was in Persia, which is a theme that we focused on last year, if you remember, because my friend in Israel wrote a book about this, which I share. Michael Eisenberg wrote a book about the it's almost like a damnation of the Jewish people because of their existence in the diaspora. But let me put it to you this way: what do most of the books, and forget about Chumash, most of the books of Tanakh, what do they consist of?
Well,
Like,
she was a prophet. I don't know if that answers the second or the first question.
Was she a prophet?
Yeah, they had Nevuah.
Okay. So that's let's use that as a springboard. So if let's say the books of the Navi, we use it Navi or Ketuvim, are about the prophets, and what happens in the typical day of a prophet in the Bible? What happens? They say something like Ko Amar Hashem. What, Shelley?
This destruction.
Right, this destruction, or meaning they bring a message of God to the people, and the people have to listen or not listen. And if they do, yay. If they don't, yo. Like that seems to be the basic pattern, right? Now,
but God is not mentioned in Esther.
Yeah, that's why I was going to say it doesn't fit with the rest of the books in Tanakh.
It doesn't. Why? Again, say why, Miriam.
Because there's no mention of Hashem, or no obvious.
Right. There's no like God's not saying, here, thou shalt do this, you shall do this, you shall behave this. Who's Rachel on the bottom, by the way? Who's Rachel off screen?
Rachel Rubin.
Rachel Rubin. Hi, Rachel Rubin. How are you? Nice to see you.
Hi, Rabbi Klibanoff. I am doing well. How are you?
So glad you could join us. I'm so happy. So there's no like, and so it's another, and Book of Tanakh is considered Kodesh. It's considered sacred, and somehow there's no God in the book.
There is. He's hidden.
Oh, you see? Now here's where I have to tell you to please block out everything that you know from your mind and leave it in the kitchen. You're too smart for us. Yes, God is hidden. There's no question God is hidden. But at the same time, would you put God is hidden in many sources, right? So if let's say you found God hidden in what was that the with all the secrets hidden? What was the movie with Tom Hanks? In the Louvre, whatever that was. Like so,
Da Vinci Code.
Right. So like if you found that, would that go in the Tanakh? Not necessarily. Okay. So that's one. Another thing that is interesting is that now that this is not the only book in Tanakh, but this is not Israel centric. This is certainly not even Jerusalem centric. The only reference that we have to Jerusalem in the entire book is the fact that they left Jerusalem. It says, oh, they came. Asher hagla Yerushalayim imagala asher hagla. Okay, fine. Now, another point. This is the question that the Gemara has. We're almost actually at our, in our Gemara here, we're almost up to that. But if I ask you to categorize Achashverosh, the Gemara has this question, like, is he a shrewd guy or is he a bumbling idiot? So just with the text alone, now I know you all know the text, you've all seen the text. What is the image or what is the sort of the persona given to this king?
Highly influenced, highly influenced, like
Or under the influence?
under the influence.
Oh, okay, that's what I thought you meant. See, Rachel Rubin, she's so tmimistic. She doesn't even know how to say like someone.
No, I just haven't had a second cup of coffee.
Well, if you quote the great movie Airplane, well, he never has a second cup of coffee, right? Anyway, all right. So he's under the influence.
Yeah, I was gonna say, to add to Rachel's point, I feel like he's like a puppet on strings, like just constantly, like people are just telling him what to do, and he's just like, okay, whatever.
Right. He's under the influence and also easily influenced. How's that? See what we did there? Okay.
Yeah.
And by the way, that's one of the ironies that Rev Soloveitchik always pointed out. The irony of the book is that in the beginning of the story, he gets rid of his queen based on the advice of his closest in charge. And then at the end of the story, he gets rid of his closest in charge based on the advice of his queen.
Interesting.
Aha. By the way, I still have like 5 copies left if anybody wants an Esther book. Anyway, so that's this Achashverosh. But look at the very first pasuk here. If you could see the screen, okay. Achashverosh hu Achashverosh hamalech mehodu ve'ad kush sheva ve'esrim u'maya medina. Okay, so we could go to Google Maps here. I don't really think we need to do that, but we all know, we have an idea where Iran is on the map. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Do we know where Hodu is?
It's India,
India. And Kush?
Ethiopia.
127 provinces from India to Ethiopia. So just put in your mind about how much space that covers. That's a lot. That's a lot of space. It's a lot of land mass. Now, do you think you could be an idiot, a drunk, bumbling idiot, and control that much land mass? So it's almost like the Megillah, first of all, does not only mention sort of like year 3, year 12 in his reign, but historically, a lot of things take place in the rule of Achashverosh. Now, I know the historians argue about who exactly he was, Xerxes, Artaxerxes, some say even Cyrus, whatever it is, but a lot of things were happening in the Persian Empire during this period, and the Megillah just sort of like glosses over it. Rebellions and building, he was able to build, let's say, canals and fortresses to be able to transport troops from one place to the other, like all of these things. And it's like instead, and they tried to burn down Athens and it didn't work. And in the end, what happens? Yeah, all right, let's party. It's like we have this portrayal of this kingdom where all they have is in those days, what happens? He's sitting on his throne. It's like he doesn't leave the throne. He doesn't leave Shushan. Okay. This is like, make whatever comparisons you want. Go ahead. Just do that on your own time. And he's in the 3rd year of his reign, he makes Mishtel Echol Sarav Avadav, everybody, and all the arm, like what's Sarav Avadav? Highs and lows, Chel, army, military, all the brass, okay, to show all of his wealth. And how long does he have? Oh no, what is it doing? No, I don't need discount auto parts. What's going on? You know what? My pop-up blocker is not working. That's bad news.
You're back.
That's bad news. Okay. Why does it say that he makes a party for how long? Shmonim ma'as yom. So it's like the fourth verse of the entire story, and we're told that he's making a party, and he just like casually, 180 days. How long is that? That's 6 months. Have you ever done anything for 6 months? Well, actually, now we can answer that question. We've done nothing straight for 6 months. Yeah, we know what that is. But can you imagine a party? Now, I know some people, like I do have some, ironically, they're Persian friends. When they make these weddings, they make these like destination things. They last like a week. And every night it's like they had to outdo the night before, and it's like a new club and a new setting and a new whatever. I don't know. Okay. And they make these, but that's like a week. After a week, everybody's like, okay, Genig Shine. Okay. How many, I don't know anybody who could party for 180 days. Oh, and by the way, if that's not enough, in the end, we have like an extra 7-day party. This is the after party. So when you have an 180-day party, the after party is 7 days. Okay. So he makes this great party, which seems to set the theme that all they care about is partying. Now, what was the behavior of the Jewish people during this party? Well, the Megillah continues.
They joined.
They joined. Okay, because it says here in verse 8, V'hashtiyah kadas ein ones. The rule for the drinking was no restrictions. Now, what that means is the Gemara tells us, or really, if you read it carefully, is everybody went, and we're told in the Gemara, what's the reason that the whole decree came? Is because they partook of the party of Achashverosh. Did the Jewish people do anything wrong? I mean, after all, they were invited to a state party, and they partook of the party, and they everything was kosher, by the way. The wine, they only had mavushal wine, and when they ate, their meals came, they were double wrapped from Ram caterers. And they had plasticware. And did I ever tell you like my Ram caterer story? I have like this great story. I was a few years ago, I had a friend, and he was in charge of the Federation of Insurance Agents. I don't know, whatever. And every year they would have this giant luncheon in Cipriani, and they would have about 1,200 people from the industry at Cipriani back when people used to work in Manhattan. And he asked me every year if I could do the invocation for the luncheon. So I would go there, and I'd be sitting on a dais. There's a dais of, it's a huge place, a huge space. So there's like 15 of us on the dais, 1,200 people in the room, and I would say my words, and then they would serve lunch. And everybody's this beautiful, beautiful lunch. And then they come and they hand me like the thing wrapped in plastic. And it's like, you need like an axe and a pick to like break the plastic open, right? And the guy next to me is sitting, he's like, what the hell is that? Like, he's like, what? You have allergies? I'm like, no, it's kosher. Explaining, but like the whole embarrassment of trying to get the thing open, and your word is when you pull too hard, what happens? Like, you ever open a bag of cereal and they don't open well, and it's like all over the place. So that's what I'm always worried about. So that's what happened at the party of Achashverosh, is that everything was fine. And yet the Jews are sort of, criticized for that. Okay, so then we have the story of Vashti. Let's go on. We'll scroll to the next chapter. Let's even skip the whole Vashti situation. And what happens? Esther becomes chosen as queen. Now, what was the process by which the queens were chosen? So this is, of course, when the girls were gathered. Many girls were assembled in the fortress under the supervision of Haggai. She was also taken, and she's she's very pleasing, like she's a looker. I mean, she's really something. She's a knockout, right? And what do? Oh, so then they give her all the cosmetics and her rations, 7 maids, and she never said who she was because Mordechai now, why did Mordechai tell her not to say anything? We don't know. Every day he would go check on her. And how long, what happens? She's there and when it comes to each girls came to go to Achashverosh at the end of the 12 months treatment. So like to be in the contest, you had to go through a 12-month treatment. Okay, you know, this is like the Bachelor on steroids over here. Okay. Although there's a lot of, from what I understand, there's a lot of drama on the Bachelor show. And I do not watch it. I promise you, I do not watch that show. I just read the news, and he got canceled for some reason. I don't know. Anyway, they would 6 months with the oil of myrrh, 6 months with perfumes. I mean, if she's so gorgeous, what does she need 6 months of oil and 6 months of perfumes for? Okay. Anyway, so it's like a whole year. And this is how every girl, and by the way, when they had a tryout with the king, they weren't playing pinochle, you know what I mean? So like, what's going on here? So she's chosen. Now, what are you expecting? Let me put it this way. What are you expecting to hear in the narrative here? Is that maybe what we would hope for, and that actually the Gemara does have this conversation really found in the Rishonim, is that, you know, Esther, in effect, in essence, is kidnapped. She's taken against her will. She should try to do everything within her power to not be chosen. Right? I mean, after all, we're told that there are 3 commandments in the Torah which you're required to give your life up for, right? So here, let's go back to the classic example. We've heard this from me a million times. Here's 1,000,001. Somebody holds a gun to your head and places in front of you a Big Mac. So Miriam Cohn doesn't know what a Big Mac is, so I'm gonna explain it to you, okay? She's like, so from. It's 2 all beef patties, special sauce, lettuce, cheese, pickles, onions on a sesame seed bun. And places that in front of you.
Rabbi, you know those details very well.
I do. I've watched a lot of television, more than I care to I have a steel trap for nonsense. So yesterday was a day off. I was home for a little bit with my kids, and they were watching one of the classics, a show called iCarly. Classic for them, whatever. A certain episode comes on, and I said, "Oh yeah, this is the one when and they all look at me like, "We had no idea which one this is, and you know which one it is. There's just something really sad about that." And I go, "Yes, that's correct. There is something really sad about that." Anyway, somebody holds a gun to your head and says, "Eat this cheeseburger. I'm going to kill you. What should you do?" Miriam Cohen Schwartz, what should you do?
Eat
Should you
it.
eat it or should you take the bullet?
You should eat it.
You should eat it. Not only that, there's a machlokas in the Rishonim whether you should make a bracha. Rambam and the Ravid, some say, because you know what? The bracha is only to allow you to eat something. But here you're actually allowed to eat it. You have to, because you're not required to give up your life. However, someone holds a gun to your head and says, "You better kill that person or I'm going to kill you." You say, "Sorry, you're going to have to take one for the team here." When the team being God, because it's one of the big 3: idol worship, murder, and illicit sexual relations. So where's the outcry here? Where's the Esther, this Bisyankov Mädel, right? She never spoke to a boy in her life. She had stockings with the stitching down the back. Her hair was in like too tight, like pigtails. And then she's like sleeping with the king. Where's the outcry? Instead, they talk about, her makeup and her treatment. And isn't it wonderful? Oh, look at her. She's really beautiful. Okay. So she gets chosen. Fine. We go on to chapter 3. She's the king. Mordechai's there. Fine. Then we're introduced to the character of Haman. Haman, for some reason, he gets promoted. And then he bows down. He says that everyone has to bow down to him. There's only one guy that won't bow down to him, of course, is Mordechai. Why does Mordechai not bow down to him? We have actually looked at this in the past. It was my best attempt at impersonating Erica Brown by using artwork to show different images of Mordechai bowing down. Is this an act, a brazen act? Is he hiding from him? Why? And we see, by the way, it's not forbidden to bow down to other people. It's forbidden to bow down to idols. So the Gemara has to fabricate sort of and the Rishonim like a scenario where, he had an idol on his neck, and by bowing down, he would, so it's not that simple. But why does Mordechai refuse to bow down to him? That's a question. And everybody says, like, why, like, Mordechai, what are you crazy? Like, what's the big deal? They say, Madua. Like, dude, it's not a big deal. Like, what are you doing? Okay. And every single day, he wouldn't listen. They told Haman, and he had to explain to them that he was a Jew. Right? They wanted to see whether, they would convince him, but he says no. So Mordechai doesn't bow. Haman sees this. He becomes angry. And what does he want to do? He wants to lay hands on Mordechai alone. He doesn't want to do it because he told who their people are. So he says, let me do away with all the Jews. Okay? Now, this is kind of like a bizarre behavior, right? So it tells you a lot about Haman, that someone who offends you, let's kill their whole family. Better yet, let's kill their entire nation. Let's just get rid of them all. That's a good way to get rid of the problem, okay? Now, what does he do? And here's the one of the focal points is on the first day of the month, that's the month of Nisan, in the 12th year of Chachashverosh, they made a pour, they made a lot, and they said, that's the month of Adar. And what happened on this lot? He said, you know what, there's going to be killing. By the way, ironically, he wasn't wrong. In other words, they left it. This is part of Persian culture. We leave it up to these other spirits to determine. These other spirits were right. It was a day of killing, just not the people they thought killing the other people. It was the other way around. That's part of the whole turnabout of the story. Okay, so what's the reasoning? And here he goes to the king, and he says to the king, Yeshno am echad mifuzar u'meforad bein ha'amim b'chol medinos malchusecha. So right here, he says there's a certain people that are scattered and dispersed among the other peoples in all the provinces of your land, of your realm. V'dasehem shanos mikol am v'dasei hamelach einam osim v'lamelach ein shaveh la'anicham. The laws are different from any of those of any other people that don't obey the king's laws, and it's not in your majesty's interest to tolerate them. So if he says, if it pleases him, I'll draw an edict and I will get rid of them. And I'm also, by the way, I'm going to fatten the coffers. I'm going to pay you 10,000 shekel, which we saw last week. Remember the shekel. Now, what's his real claim to Haman's claim to Achashverosh? This is also very, very bizarre behavior. The author here does not give us much to work with as to why does Haman want to destroy this people, and even more so, why does Achashverosh agree to it? Okay, so go ahead, tell me why. What if you're Haman convincing Achashverosh to kill citizens of your realm? What are you saying to him? How are you convincing him? What are you going to say?
That the citizens endanger him in some way.
Oh, they endanger him. Okay, so
They're an example of people who rebelled. Here's a man who killed Vashti because she would be a bad example to all the other wives throughout the kingdom. So if you have a nation that rebels and won't bow, well, they could be an example to all the other nations, and then you're going to have an insurrection.
Okay, so we only all we're told is who they are. He doesn't talk about necessarily. I mean, would you say that this is like a religious, like to destroy them on religious grounds? That
he just says that they don't obey the king's laws.
Mhm.
yeah, but so wouldn't you have started with that?
There's anti-Semitism here, classic anti-Semitism.
Okay, but so let me ask you this: if he would just say like this, "Vayomer Haman lamelech Achashverosh, yeshno am echad that enam that dasei asher dasei hamelech enam osim," that don't follow the king's laws. Now, to tell you that they're spread out all over the place, well, I mean, let's go back to our geography. This is a big landmass, so naturally there are going to be people spread out all over the place, and their laws are different. Yeah, okay. That's not too hard to imagine. I mean, we live in a country where laws vary from state to state, right? Like you could be 15 and you could drive like a 18-wheeler, like if you live in Iowa or something, right? But here you have to be 18 to drive past 9 o'clock at night or something like that, right? I mean, whatever it is. So states have different laws. That shouldn't bother us so much. But the fact that the the description here is so unbelievably vague, and the fact that Achashverosh goes for it, that's really again, these are I'm just pointing out these sort of anomalies, which only contribute to our question as to why is this book even in Tanach? Like, what's the real message that we have to get out of the story of Esther?
What's even more interesting about like his request and like him going to Ahasuerus, he doesn't even mention it's the Jewish people. He just says
Correct.
there's a people. So does Ahasuerus doesn't even know what he's signing up for, or does he just like, okay, like I believe you, like go for it. Whatever nation's a problem, do it.
Correct. It's only earlier that in reference to Haman, if you look earlier in verse 6, verse 4, Ki higid lahem asher hu Yehudi. So first of all, he's upset that Mordechai doesn't bow down to him. And then afterwards, they told Haman, and in other words, so what we had done when we did our artistic analysis of this is that Haman probably didn't even realize at first. He's got a lot of people bowing down to him, and maybe, he doesn't even notice. But the fact is that someone lets him know, Vayagidu Haman, to see, to test, to see, let's see what Mordechai does now that Haman's paying attention. And then Kihigid lahem asher Yehudi. And then they explained to him, by the way, he's a Jew. Here's the anti-Semitism angle, so to say. Okay, so now the next pasuk is Vayar Haman. Haman didn't realize, only after Higid lahem, they told him, and now Vayar, he sees, Ki'ein Mordechai Koreh Mishtachav Elo. Doesn't say, by the way, Mordechai HaYehudi, just Mordechai. Now, Mordechai could have been, from Swahili, whatever. It wouldn't matter. Now he has to fabricate an entire premise to destroy Mordechai. Now, ironically, again, this goes into Rabbi Foreman's bit about really he didn't want to destroy Mordechai personally. He wanted to destroy the whole nation. But in the end of the day, it became very, very personal. Okay, that's what it says. He didn't want to. It was like beneath him. Vayivez be'enav. What does that mean? Vayivez be'enav. It's like it's a pasnish, like to kill Mordechai alone, right? Ki higidu lo es am Mordechai, having been told who Mordechai's people were, meaning I'm a little afraid of them. Like if I go after Mordechai, maybe this is again we'll talk about insurrection. Maybe they'll come after me. So therefore, he wants to get rid of the entire nation. Let's figure this out. Mordechai. The nation of Mordechai. In other words, this is all about Mordechai, but he uses the people. Now, that's why he's so vague in describing this to Achashverosh, again, which only adds to sort of the allure or this mystique of Achashverosh's character. Is like, does he have a clue what's going on? Does he even care? Like, you want to commit some sort of genocide under his watch? You know what? The bank accounts are full, so I don't really care. It doesn't matter. So it's like all this is just a lot of different questions here. Now, and it gets even more vague when we see the response from the Jewish people. So we look at Mordechai finally tells Esther what's going on. That's the next chapter. Mordechai is like figuring out what's going on. And by the way, we always say this is the transition where up until now it's Mordechai. Mordechai's telling Esther what to do. And that at a certain point, there's a paradigm shift, and then Esther takes control, and she starts telling Mordechai what to do. Esther goes into the foreground, Mordechai goes into the background. And this is indeed why it's called Megillat Esther, the story of Esther. Okay, so everybody's crying, everybody's wailing. What do you do as a people when you find out there's a genocide against you? There's an edict of genocide, and by the way, they had a lot of time. They had like 11 months. Could you just imagine? I can't imagine, but could you imagine? And somebody says, and by the way, the lesson is that when your enemy says they want to kill you, believe them, because they mean it. So imagine you get a certified letter in the mail. It's not like one of those fake certified letters. It's a real certified letter. Some of the people here probably don't know what a certified letter is. If your name is Miriam, you know what a certified letter. I just like picking on you because I can. No, but like you get official mail. And it's not like, you've won the sweepstakes that says, hi, you're Jewish. In 11 months, you're going to be killed on this date. Like, what would the reaction be? A good question. It's a really good question. People wouldn't believe it. People would take the political action. People would protest. People would leave. I mean, whatever it is. So everybody is screaming and crying. And in Verse 3, V'chol Medina, O Medina, wherever the king's reach was, everybody's crying. Everybody's fasting. Okay, it's Soma B'chiyah Misped. We even read this in the Nigun Eicha. V'chol Medina, Medina. Amikam Asher Evel Gadol Yehudim. It's Soma B'chiyah Misped. Tzak Efer Yutza L'Rabim. Okay, so Mordechai then he's like, okay, we got to do something. So we has this faithful, we know this great exchange here. I think it's the most important exchange we have in the Megillah. Certainly one of the most important is that they go back and forth to Esther, and then he says he'd tell Esther tell him. It's like a lot of back and forth. It's an interesting thing. And then we have this weird like inner courtyard, outer courtyard, which, by the way, we'll come back to this later. So Mordechai says here, verse 13 and 14. Mordechai, Vayomer Mordechai Lashiva Esther, Al Tidami B'Nafshech Lihimaleit Beis Abel Chikol Yehudim. Don't imagine that you, of all the Jews, will escape with your life because you're going to be in the safety of the palace. Ki Macharesh Tacharishi Be'es Hazos Revach Ba'Atala Yamol Yehudim Makom Acher Va'at Beis Avich Tavedu U'Miyadeim La'es Kazos Hi Ga'at La Malchus. No, if you keep silent in this crisis, relief and deliverance come to the Jews from another quarter, while you and your father's house will perish. And who knows? Perhaps you have retained the royal position for just this moment. So, what? You're Mordechai. You're desperate. Your people are about to be killed, and Esther is there. What's the message you're going to give her? Is this what you're going to say to her? I don't know. I mean, I'm just thinking, like, how would you formulate this directive to Esther?
I mean, he's pretty mystical. He's basically saying that she was placed there for a reason, and if she doesn't do it, the salvation will come from elsewhere. It's this mystical message that we have to step up.
Right. So what does elsewhere mean? Mi makom acher. Is that mi makom acher? Now it's not. If you're telling me that it means that it's going to come, that someone else will be the savior, not you, Esther, which is usually how we read it, which is how I always read it. Esther, you're in the best position possible to save us. And if you don't, then someone else will step in. But that's not what it says. It says, mimakom, a different place. Now, by the way, what should he say?
Different person.
God. Where's the God?
Makom.
Oh, so maybe that's what it means, makom. But it doesn't mean makom like a different God, by the way, makom acher. But maybe this is a reference to God. That's mentioned. But like, of all places to mention God, this would be like the number one place. Esther, you got to act because God is at work here. So it's deliberately vague here to leave God out of this. Not only that, so what does she do? She says, and she tells people, what should they do? And then I will go to the king. She tells people to do what?
Fast.
Okay, so if you're a good Bis Yaakov Meidel, and she still is, by the way, of course, because she never had yichud with the king and chas v'shalom, and she only wore gloves. She never touched him directly. Like, well, you can give every answer you want. Okay, now if you're now in a position to do something and to influence those around you, what's the first thing that Bis Yaakov Meidel tells her chaverim to do in the WhatsApp chat?
Fast. Very
Fast.
Fast?
Daven.
Fast. To daven. Where's the davening? Esther should say, no, you have to have a Tehillim group. I'm going to give out the Tehillim Mechulak, and we're all going to say it. And you should do this and make sure the letters correspond to your name. And you have to say it 3 times. You have to say it at 3 o'clock in the morning. And you have to. She says fast. Fast for 3 days. By the way, when were these 3 days?
Pesach.
She's telling him, by the way, there's no Seder this year. You don't have to make the maror and the charosis, okay? This year we're fasting because we're about to die. no davening. So there's a lot. I'm just saying there's so much that when you read the psukim carefully, and certainly in aggregate, what happens is that there is a tremendous amount of questions that we're left with. We not only that, there's so much that's not said. The Torah doesn't give us every detail of everything. The Torah doesn't discuss 38 years in the desert, and the Torah can skip over, generations in Bereshit like nothing, because it's nothing that we really need to know. But here we're going to go about this back and forth, and the party to another party, and we know about the sort of the assimilation. So we could have a picture of a Jewish people that's not heavily God invested in the diaspora, have assimilated. They're partying with the king. They even claim that the names Esther and Mordechai are actually Persian names. Merodach, Esther from Ishtar. Ishtar, we should know because it's one of the biggest movie flops of all time. There's a movie Ishtar with Dustin Hoffman back in the 80s, I believe, and they spent like $40 million to make it. That was a lot of money back then, and and it was a big flop. Anyway, Ishtar, and what was her name was Hadassah. His name was whatever. He was one of Anshe Knesset Agdola. At the end of the story, it says like, yeah, most people liked him, which is interesting. But so we have this picture of like a people that's lost, a king that's frivolous. The whole destiny of this nation is based on what? On chance, on Pur. He casts lots based on his gods. Okay, so now, I'll stop the share. I'll ask you this. So armed with that information, and there's so much more there. Ask yourself this, going back to the original question. Why is this story then incorporated into the canonization of Tanach? What is the takeaway message? What is it that we should want to get out of the story of Esther, that Chazal felt it's so important that it has to be, I have my Tanach here. I have like 17 Tanachs, but like, I have this, I keep it on my desk. This like right here with, it's mine, by the way. If anybody ever claims to be me and doesn't have these in the books, then it's an imposter. I'm just giving you that secret information. So if like, why is that all there? Why is it in there?
We're not safe in the diaspora. We're not safe.
We're not safe, but the story has a happy ending.
The happy ending is a miracle.
Okay. So you think the whole book is there as a warning?
Yes.
Wow, it's pretty bleak.
The happy ending is when she speaks up. It's not just, I don't think it's just a miracle. I think it's because she does speak up.
Well,
that line is the line that it's there for.
Right. Because she recognizes right away her tafkid, her purpose at that moment, and she capitalizes on it. Look, that's a very worthwhile message, which you don't see a lot in Tanakh. I mean, and by the way, if you wanted, and we've done this a million times, but the comparison between the Yosef story is just phenomenal. Okay, when you have two people that rise to second in command, all while hiding their identity, but the whole story of where it's someone from the tribe of Benjamin saving the rest of the Yehuda of the Yehudim, whereas in the end of the Joseph story, it's somebody from Yehuda named Yehuda saving all of Benjamin and saving him. Like, it's a lot of like everything comes full circle. So what Rav Yoel Ben Nun says, and I think this is also a very, very crucial message, it incorporates everything that everybody has been saying so far. But part of it is that divine providence takes many forms. And if we would only have stories in Tanakh where we would say, divine providence is when God appoints a Navi, a prophet, he stands up on his soapbox and he says, Ko Amar Hashem, or Od Arba'im Yom V'Ninveh Nehepachas, a 5-word prophecy, in 40 days, Nineveh is going to be destroyed. I mean, first of all, if we had prophets today, if a prophet would show up today and give us prophecy, we would lock the guy up in 2 seconds in Bellevue. Okay, you ever go to like the old days in Times Square where people like all the nut jobs are running around there? You go to Times Square and there's everybody standing up saying the world is going to end and this and that. That's what the prophets were. People thought they're nuts. No, God. So they were holy people. We believed them. We didn't believe them. Didn't listen. Okay, but if you think that that's the only model of how God is going to communicate with you, that God's name has to be there, you have to have an official sort of communicate, oh, this is from God, or an official messenger. No, divine providence takes place even in the diaspora, or even in the most hidden of circles, in the most sort of backwards type of ways. Here you can make these connections between the palace of Achashverosh and the Beis HaMikdash people do, because in the 40th chapter of Yecheskel, where it discusses the third Beis HaMikdash, it talks about also the inner chamber and the outer chamber. And only twice did the Kohen Gadol go in on Yom Kippur. Once was to create the Keturah, the cloud, and the second was to bring the blood. So twice Esther goes in to the chamber, the inner chamber of the king. Once is to plead her case, the second is to plead it again. Like, all these, how everything lines up and you have these parallels. But the idea is that we don't need all these details. And so much was accomplished by Achashverosh during his reign, and he ruled over a tremendous amount. But really what is, and by the way, this is definitely a satire, but what we're trying to tell you is that Hashgacha Pratis, divine providence, can be found in the most unusual places. And that's what makes it part of Tanach. And if you look back at your own lives, I am sure, I'm positive that each and every one of you will find moments of divine providence. Usually it's, by the way, in hindsight. We don't see it necessarily while it's happening. But if you look back and said, had I gone there, or had I not gone there, had I not attended, had I not we all have stories like that. And it could be the person you married, the person you didn't marry, it could be the job you took, the job you didn't take, it could be the house you bought, the house you didn't buy, the shul you went to, the shul, on and on and on and on and on. Okay, all of that is part of Hashgacha Pratis. It's all part of divine providence. And we have to see that in our lives, that God is very much present in our lives, whether we could see clearly or not. And sometimes we only see after the fact. What's the one thing that Moshe wanted to see? It's coming up in Parshas Kisisa. What's the one thing Moshe asked God that he wanted to see?
Or land of Israel.
No, this not yet, but in after the story of the Egel, he's kind of like up there on the mountain with God, and he says to God, he has a very strange request. He says to him, what? He says, God, I want to see your
Face.
I want to see your face. So what does God answer him?
You can't.
He says, no, I'll tell you what you do.
Go into the nook.
Yeah, hide behind the rock. By the way, the appropriate word to use in the definition there is the cleft. Okay, go on the cleft of the rock, and like I'm gonna put my talus and I'm gonna like whoosh by, and he's like, you won't see me, but you'll see my back. Like, it's very fulfilling, that story, right? But what Chazal tell us is what he's saying is God says, you can't, he was asking the number one question of like, God, I don't understand. He was asking theodicy. Why do good things happen to bad people? Why do bad things happen to good people? God, I don't understand how you work. And God says, you'll never understand how I work. You'll only see my behind. You'll only see it from after the fact. Post facto, that's how you're going to see it. But you have to look for it and you have to see it. And that's exactly the story of Esther. Esther min haTorah minayin, Anoch Esther, Esther es Panai. God, correctly, exactly like Yafit said, that God is hidden. That's the source of Esther's name. Why we insist on using the Persian name Esther, Ishtar, which is Hester, which means hidden, because everything in the story is hidden. But everything in our lives, it's all there. We just need to uncover it. It's hidden, but we have to uncover it, and you'll find the godliness therein. So that's sort of like this macro approach of why does the Megillah even belong in part of Tanach? What we'll look at next time, Emir Hashem, I'll share you this piece from if you have the book and you want to read ahead, and then you'll know exactly the class, then you won't have to come. It's on page 91 of the book. Page 91 of the book. You have a whole week to get it and read it. It's such an easy read. The whole book is like 120 pages. It's nothing, but you jump right in and you can't get out because it's so engaging. I promise you won't be disappointed. I can't guarantee your money back because I'm not telling it to you, but I promise you will really enjoy it. So if you want to read that chapter, we'll discuss that next week. Why call the holiday Purim? And he's going to do, as he does, beautiful intertextual relationships of between the story of Purim and if I gave you 1,000 guesses, you would never guess where he would compare it to, because it's just totally out of the blue. But when you read it, it's like, Emes Lamito Shel Torah, like, wow, this is really it. So I hope everybody will, you're probably not gonna be able to sleep the next 7 nights just waiting for that. So you're gonna have to go buy the book and read it. I know that. I just know, I know my crowd. Anyway, hope everybody has a great day. And for our, you know what, we'll have a great Purim this year, and then hopefully by our learning, and then right after Purim we could start already learning about Pesach. Yay, because it's more Mishkan stuff. So one of those weeks, Vivian's going to be hosting the Haggadah Shiur, because she has 4,000 Haggadahs to teach us from, and she will. Maybe we'll get your husband to like do a guest appearance.
Really don't want that.
No,
No.
I'm going to have to edit this recording then. Anyway, everybody have a wonderful day. And
Thank you, Rabbi.
Thank you, Rabbi.
Rabbi.
Bye.
Thank you.